Ever since Metroid Dread was announced, we've been making Metroid videos on a weekly basis. And by we, I mean I, because I can't help myself. Apparently I've been doing it wrong though, because in this story recap video, I made the grave mistake of including Metroid Other M in the timeline because it isn't canon. Except, you know, that hasn't been confirmed at all. Honestly though, Metroid Other M does mess things up in the timeline quite a bit, with story elements contradicting events that should have occurred in other games, and the other games contradicting events that supposedly happened in Other M. So, what's going on? Is Metroid Other M canon, or is it not? We need answers, and we're going to find them. But first, how did this kerfuffle even begin? If you ask me, the reception of Other M has a lot to do with this debate. While there are a lot of fans who love and defend this game to death, there are also a lot of fans who believe it is the worst Metroid of all time and is responsible for almost killing the franchise. We're not going to critique the game for this video, that will come later, but there's no doubt that people have strong feelings about Other M, and they are justified. The game makes some questionable decisions with its gameplay, and more importantly, story, making Samus out to be a fragile character. In short, people want to pretend like this game didn't happen, hence the claims that it isn't canon to the Metroid timeline, despite Nintendo never confirming this.
Believe me, I know, I've looked.
There have also been claims that series producer Yoshio Sakamoto confirmed it in the development history video of Metroid Dread, saying this is the first new story and new episode for the series in 19 years, which seems as if he's dismissing Other M entirely, being a new story just 11 years ago, not counting the spin-off Federation Force in 2015. However, it should be implied that he means this is the next new entry of the Metroid timeline since Metroid Fusion 19 years ago, which is currently the last game in the timeline. While Other M was technically a new story, true, it was set before Fusion and after Super Metroid, so it's not a continuation of the timeline. Also, it would be very odd if Sakamoto personally wiped Other M from the canon, considering he wrote, produced, and directed the game. However, there are a few lines of dialogue written in the story that seem to contradict previous Metroid games in the timeline. The first one being spoken by Samus, saying that her mission in Other M was the first joint mission she'd been a part of with the Galactic Federation since becoming a freelance bounty hunter.
It was the first joint mission I'd been a part of since becoming a freelance bounty hunter.
She must have a very short memory, because she had quite a big collaboration with the Galactic Federation in Metroid Prime 3. Where she and a few other bounty hunters were in a defense against space pirates who were attacking Federation ships and bases. She also spent the rest of the game teaming up with the Galactic Federation to destroy an entire planet. Not a very small operation if you ask me. Either this line in Other M was an oversight by Sakamoto, or it's actually him trying to decanonize the Metroid Prime trilogy. The Prime trilogy is ultimately a side story set before Metroid 2, and their events don't affect the timeline at all. Sakamoto also wasn't involved in the development of this trilogy, so maybe as a result of this, he doesn't consider them canon. Although, you could flip the script and say that this supports the theory that Metroid Other M isn't canon, since this statement contradicts the known timeline. And the simple fact that Nintendo is continuing the Prime series of games with Prime 4, and to an extent Federation Force, then this has to show which side of the argument Nintendo is on. Yet again, they do like to model Samus after her Other M look in Super Smash Bros., so maybe they just don't care. This isn't the only contradiction in Other M though, as this game also doesn't take into account a line from Metroid Fusion, where Samus states that this is her second time taking orders from a CO. Since Other M is set before Fusion, wouldn't this be her third time taking orders from a CO? I mean, who else is going to authorize the usage of her Varia suit?
Activate the Varia feature on your suit to protect yourself from heat damage.
Wow, Adam, thank you so much for authorizing the usage of this feature on my suit that wouldn't have affected literally anyone else on the team except for me. Thank you so much, Adam, you're the best CO! Where would I be without you? Bitterness for Adam aside, this can also be written off as an oversight, since Fusion was written before Other M, but you would at least hope that Sakamoto would have taken this line into consideration while writing this game. Matter of fact, most of the inconsistencies found in Other M can be chalked down to just one thing: Yoshio Sakamoto is a great game designer, but perhaps not a great writer. When writing a story set between a bunch of important games, you have to pay attention to the tiniest of details found in those other games in order to create a seamless continuity. Metroid Other M messes with that continuity significantly, which could have been avoided had Sakamoto remembered what was done and said in the other Metroid games. We can theorize that these oversights have a certain meaning to them, but that's all they are. Oversights. And you know what? The Zelda series contradicts itself all the time too. Nintendo developers tend to put gameplay first and don't concern themselves too much with inconsistencies. Still, given that the Metroid timeline isn't nearly as complex as the Zelda one, these particular mistakes could have been avoided. So with that all in mind, is Metroid Other M canon? Well, luckily for you, I have the answer. It really doesn't. Honestly, if you ignore the oversights in the dialogue, Other M fits in the timeline no problem. However, if you took it out of the timeline, there would also be virtually no consequences. The only thing of significance that happens in Other M is that Adam dies, and then in Fusion, Samus names her ship computer after him, which later returns in Dread. And you know what? His death could have easily happened at any moment in the Metroid timeline. It's never once specified in Fusion when he dies. In conclusion, Metroid Other M is a very inconsequential game to the Metroid timeline. If you removed it, there's no damage done. If you added it, there's no damage done. While yes, there are problems with the story and Samus's characterization, it's not like she stays the same mopey, monotone person in Metroid Fusion and soon to be Metroid Dread. So in the end, we can confirm that Other M's placement in the timeline doesn't really matter, but just to be safe, we still included it in our Metroid story recap to cover all bases. Given that Sakamoto is the producer of Metroid Dread, it's possible he could bring back some story elements from Other M into that game. So as of right now, at least, there is no proof that Metroid Other M isn't canon. This could change if anything from Other M's story is mentioned in Dread, such as specifics on Adam's death, but we won't know until the game's release. And maybe, just maybe, we will finally remember Anthony Higgs.
Remember me?
You know, Anthony, I'm usually good with faces, but right now, I'm drawing a blank. Until then, Other M's story doesn't really have an impact on the timeline, and if you're trying to catch up on the series before Dread comes out, it's not much of a requirement to play. However, we'll make a more detailed video on Metroid Other M in the near future. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe to GameXplain for more Metroid content, and check out the videos on the right for more topics that you might be interested in. Until next time, bye.